Unraveling the Sinister Secrets of Reddit, 15 Spine-Chilling True Horror Tales Exposed. Jessica had no idea how much her life was about to change. She was scrolling through Reddit, half asleep after a 12-hour nursing shift, when it all started. The title glared back at her like a warning beacon: 15 Spine-Chilling True Horror Tales Exposed. She chuckled, thinking it was just another late-night scare fest. But as she dove deeper, her amusement turned to dread. Each story was more terrifying than the last: families vanishing without a trace, neighbors with unsettling secrets, children lured by figures cloaked in shadows. Her heart raced, the late-night stillness of Columbus, Ohio, wrapping around her like a cold shroud. That it was too long before she stumbled upon a chilling account that struck a nerve. A mother, much like herself, wrote about the disturbing disappearance of pets in their tight-knit suburb. As she read, dread coiled around Jessica's heart like a viper. The story spoke of a sinister figure stalking children, whispering at night, and the odd symbols that appeared on the old oak trees in the park. Jessica shivered and glanced out her window at the street, the perfect calm of suburban life suddenly feeling like a well-crafted illusion. As days turned into nights, interactions with her neighbors transformed from polite nods to weird, uneasy exchanges. The laughter of children playing outside grew tense, muffled whispers echoing in the air, striking fear deep in her bones. The sounds of the night became amplified: the creaking of branches, the rustle of leaves, enough to make her jump. Each sunset felt like the beginning of something ominous, a prelude to horrors lurking just beyond her white picket fence. She tried to voice her concerns to the local authorities, but they dismissed her worries with polite smiles that only stoked her unease. What did they know? What did they hide? Meanwhile, Mia and Ethan seemed to sense the change too. They no longer played outside after dark, their imaginations running wild with shadowy figures. Panic washed over her as she discovered new symbols on the old trees, marks her children whispered about during recess. The cozy warmth of her home morphed into a cage of paranoia. Then came the day when young Ethan went missing during a school field trip. Her heart plummeted as reality gripped her like ice. Jessica's world spiraled. Panic-stricken, she rushed through the park, the once conservative suburb now a labyrinth of mistrust. Every familiar face morphed into a potential threat. She felt strangled by a web of friendly facades hiding dark secrets. She had to dig deeper. What horrors had her community buried? What truths lay behind the pleasantries of block parties and lawn mowing? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days passed, every encounter stripped away layers of trust, revealing unsettling connections. Eventually, she unearthed whispers of a dark local folklore rife with ancient pacts, something sinister brewing beneath the surface. The comfort of her home felt suffocating, as shadows inched closer, encroaching on her children's safety. Just when she thought it couldn't get worse, the shape of a familiar face emerged from the shadows, a betrayal poised to unleash a nightmare she never saw coming. Racing against time with fear as her guide, she made her way through the darkness, every fiber of her being screaming to protect Ethan. But as the echoes of her community's hidden past swirled around her, Jessica found herself at the edge of a decision. Should she confront the lurking horror, or flee into the unknown night, leaving everything behind? The chilling choice loomed, like the very shadows closing in, and she felt a grip of icy dread tighten around her heart as she stumbled toward the truth. What sacrifice would she be forced to make to save her son? Jessica felt the darkness tightening around her, each breath a struggle as her mind raced through the disarray of her shattered suburban reality. The shadows seemed alive, whispering warnings as she navigated her own front lawn, which only hours earlier had felt safe and inviting. Now, it felt like a battleground shadowed by horrors. With every step, her heart thudded erratically, a drum signaling dread. The symbols carved into the oak trees flashed in her mind, twisted shapes, each one a warning. Had they always been there? Had she missed the signs? She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting someone to leap from behind her perfectly manicured bushes. Could anyone be trusted? She picked up her pace, knowing she had to find Ethan. In the quiet suburb where laughter once rang freely, there was only a chilling silence, broken occasionally by the rustle of leaves or the echo of her frantic heartbeat. Her neighbors, once friendly faces, now morphed into shadows with hidden agendas. She could feel their eyes on her from behind drawn curtains, studying her every move with a predatory gaze. "Help me, Mommy," the faint whisper drifted on the night air, sending icy tendrils down her spine. Was it Ethan? The sound felt close yet impossibly far, wrapping her in a chaotic panic. She sprinted toward the looming dark tree line of the park, each step fueled by desperation. Dread charged her limbs, but she had to fight against it. The park, once a haven for families, now felt like the mouth of a monster, waiting to swallow her whole. As she entered the park, a gust of cold wind brushed against her face, carrying with it an overwhelming sense of grief. The trees loomed ominously, branches like skeletal fingers beckoning her deeper into darkness. The air thickened with tension, the shadows appearing almost to pulse as if welcoming her unwelcome intrusion, and then she saw it, a faint, flickering light in the distance. A campfire? Maybe other parents were searching for their kids too. Hope ignited within her as she rushed toward it, the flame flickering like a desperate heartbeat, but as she drew closer, her stomach sank. The light gathered around a circle of neighbors, faces illuminated in ghostly shadows. They murmured excitedly, their words indistinct yet tinged with conspiratorial laughter. Jessica hesitated, creeping closer. Her heart hammered louder, the urge to confront them battling against the instinct to run. Then, she caught snippets of their hushed conversation. "He'll be the next one," one voice said, making her blood run cold. "The pact must be fulfilled," another chimed in, laughter bubbling ominously beneath the words. The truth struck her like a knife. Those who she had shared baked goods and casual small talk with were woven into the very fabric of this sinister web, an underground ritual she never knew existed. Fueled with outrage and fear, she stepped forward. "What are you talking about? Where's Ethan?" The circle fell silent, eyes sharpening like daggers upon her. Then, the familiar face from the shadows stepped out, a wide smile that chilled her to the bone. It was Mrs. Klein, the librarian who regularly enthralled the neighborhood with tales of local lore. "No need to worry, Jessica. It's all part of the game," she said, her voice slick and syrupy. "Game." The word twisted in Jessica's gut. The wood cracked beneath her feet, a warning that whatever this was, it wasn't just a story. The flickering flame licked at the night, revealing glimmers of strange symbols etched into the ground, a dreadful circle. They had lured her deeper into their trap, and now the shadows around her closed in tighter. "Join us or lose everything," Mrs. Klein whispered, a lure shrouded in threat. Jessica's breath quickened at the terrifying realization. She had come seeking her son, but what if the true horror was much more than she had prepared for? Would she stand tall against the twisted loyalty of her neighbors, or lose everything in a game not of her choosing? A haunting silence draped over the park, awaiting her decision. Jessica felt the intensity of their gazes piercing through her, turning the warmth of the campfire into an unbearable heat that suffocated her. Every second stretched, making her feel like a prisoner in a web spun by the unseen hands of her once trusted neighbors. The night air was stagnant, heavy with secrets and the scent of burning wood. Panic surged in her throat as she searched for any sign of Ethan among the faces that glimmered in the flickering firelight. "What do you want?" She managed to croak, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears, fragile as glass. Mrs. Klein stepped closer, her pupils glinting like obsidian stones. "Ah, but don't you see? It's not about what we want, dear Jessica. It's about the balance, the offering we must make, and you are woven into this equation now." The other neighbors remained silent, their expressions warped with something unsettling, something primal. The night felt alive, breathing heavily, drowning in expectation. Jessica's pulse raced in time with the flickering flames, and she felt a cold sweat trickle down her back. Offering? What kind of offering? She could hardly finish the sentence as the realization dawned. Each neighbor had their eyes fixed on her, not the warmth of companionship she had relied upon, but rather an anticipating hunger that rendered her more prey than participant. With a sudden spark of adrenaline, she backed away, her instinct screaming at her to flee. "Where's Ethan?" she shouted, desperation clawing against her throat. "I want him back." Laughter erupted from the group, echoing through the trees, sending shivers down her spine. It mingled with the dying light, an unsettling tune around the campfire. A cold voice said, "He is close, Jessica. So close. But you must decide join us willingly, or he can be lost forever." A sharp gasp escaped her lips as an image of her son's frightened face invaded her mind, a flicker of a smile that was now swallowed by the familiar darkness. She refused to believe they held any power over him, but a gnawing dread settled in her stomach. Think of it, dear. A chance to embrace the truth, to be part of something greater enough. She glanced to the edges of the clearing, half expecting Ethan to emerge from the shadows, yet there was nothing but more darkness. "I can't let you do this. I want to let you take him." With newfound resolve, Jessica turned sharply, ready to escape, but Mrs. Klein's voice echoed behind her, "You can't run from this, it's already too late. The pact will be fulfilled." The ground trembled ever so slightly beneath her feet, sending panic flooding through her veins. She stumbled forward and the acrid smoke stung her eyes, disorienting her as she dashed deeper into the trees. The laughter faded into the distance, replaced by whispers flitting like moths in the dark. She squinted into the oppressive shadows, searching but finding only thick darkness, clutching at her like icy fingers. "Ethan!" she called, her voice cracking, desperation etched into every syllable. The rustling of leaves met her ears, drawing her towards a small opening in the trees. As she pushed through, she came upon an ancient stone that jutted from the earth, markings similar to those she had seen around the bonfire. No, the word slipped from her lips, realization dawning. The symbols were all part of it, the game, the pact. What have they done? Before she could process her thoughts, she caught sight of something moving in the shadows, a figure, small and hunched. It was Ethan, his small body poring over something on the ground. "Mommy!" he called, his voice sweet and terrified all at once, but as she stepped forward, she noticed that he was not alone. Surrounding him were three tall, shadowy figures, their forms distorted like nightmares. The darkness pulsed around them as they reached out for him, eager shadows that seemed to swallow the light. "Ethan! Step away!" Terror clawed at her throat. But it was too late. The figures drew closer, and her son's eyes widened, reflecting a fear that mirrored her own. Before she could reach him, a chorus of laughter broke through the night, and echoes of her neighbors reignited the horrifying truth. "They planned this all along. Join us or lose him forever." The whispers slithered like serpents through the air, tightening around her. Jessica stood frozen as the sinister intentions circled like vultures. Could she fight the suffocating dread? Who could she trust in this twisted game? As she lunged forward, the shadows moved in unison, a suffocating rush of darkness that swallowed her whole, leaving her with only one terrifying thought: what would she sacrifice to save her son? The darkness loomed over her, waiting. Jessica's heart was hammering in her chest, a frantic drum echoing in the dense silence of the trees. She could see Ethan's small silhouette, trembling with fear, but the figures surrounding him had begun to shift, their shapes becoming more distinct, long limbs and faces that were almost human but twisted in ways that defied natural law. "Ethan!" she screamed again, her voice breaking, filled with desperation. She sprinted toward him, feet pounding against the damp earth, branches tearing at her skin, drawing blood, but she couldn't feel the pain. All that mattered was reaching her son. The shadows whispered to Ethan, their words a hissing murmur that skated along Jessica's nerves. "Come, join us. You can be one of us." Each syllable dripped with a dark promise, a sweet lure that might entrap the innocent. Just as she reached the edge of the circle, one of the figures turned its head fully towards her, its eyes blazing like hollow flames. The sight made her stumble backward, blood freezing in her veins. But she forced herself to take a deep breath, to keep moving, to not let her fear paralyze her. "Come away from them, Ethan. Please." Her voice seemed distant, swallowed by the encroaching darkness that thickened like a storm cloud. The boy stood frozen, his wide eyes reflecting terror and fascination in equal measure. "Mommy, I don't understand. They said you would join us, too." "No." She gasped, inching closer, arm outstretched in a desperate plea. "I won't join anyone until you're safe." But Ethan's gaze flickered back to the dark figures, the allure of their whispers tempting him. "I want to be a part of it. It's exciting." "Exciting?" Jessica's voice trembled with disbelief. "Ethan, no. They're lying to you. They want to take you from me." The shadows snarled, "She comes too late. The choice is made." In that moment, they lunged forward, tendrils of darkness grasping at his limbs, pulling him away from her. "No. Don't touch him." Jessica charged, adrenaline surging, and she broke through the shadowy barrier. She grabbed Ethan's hand, yanking him away with all her might, but the darkness tightened around them, cold and suffocating. With all the strength left in her, she shouted, "We're leaving. I have you." But the shadows twisted and writhed, pulling back, testing her hold. A fierce panic gripped her. The trees around them twisted into unnatural shapes, whispering warnings that seeped into the air. The pact was awakening. Lasting shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and she could feel the weight of their hunger, gnawing, insatiable. "Mommy, I'm scared." Ethan whimpered, tears streaming down his cheeks as they both struggled against the hidden hands that sought to drag him back. "I know, sweetheart, I know." She tightened her grip on him as the shadows were beginning to tear at the fabric of their reality, shrieking with a mingling of frustration and hunger, their words a cacophony of violence and entrapment. Join us, surrender." Thunder rumbled overhead, but it was not a storm. The earth trembled beneath her feet, and the very air was charged and electric. Jessica steeled herself, muscles tensing as she made an agonizing choice. "Stand back, Ethan." With every ounce of her love, she surged forward, screaming into the void, "I will fight for you. You are mine." The shadows recoiled at her defiance, momentarily stunned, but they were relentless, continuing their encroachment with a renewed fury, their whispers now like a terrible wailing. Jessica could feel breath on her neck, icy fingers caressing her shoulder, and revulsion surged through her. This was not just darkness, it was ancient and powerful. The moment stretched unbearably, the choice laid bare before her: give in, or fight against insurmountable odds. Behind her, she sensed the silent witnessing of her neighbors, eyes gleaming with a feral anticipation, urging her towards destruction. Suddenly, she felt the symbols beneath her feet awakening, pulsing with energy, threatening to consume them both. Was this the source of the darkness? She remembered the ancient stone. "Ethan, hold on to me. We have to go back." But the figures surged again, relentless, intent on reclaiming their prize. Jessica's blood turned to ice as she realized the terrible cost of their game. But as she prepared for a final stand, an eerie silence enveloped them, and a soft, chilling voice whispered, "The true sacrifice is yet to come." In that instant, the forest held its breath, awaiting the choice that could alter their fates forever. Would she be forced to make a sacrifice she never imagined? The weight of it pressed upon her as the darkness throbbed around them, ready to pull them back into the abyss. What must she do now to save her son? The shadows recoiled, thrown off balance by Jessica's fierce proclamation. She felt the breath of the woods, the cool night air holding a stillness that was almost palpable, as if the world had paused to witness their struggle. "Ethan, we have to move," she urged again, scanning the perimeter, looking for a weakness, a crack in their dark fortress. But Ethan's gaze remained locked on the figures, their limbs stretching and curling in grotesque motions, whispers underscoring their every movement. "Mommy, I don't want to leave them." Her stomach twisted. "They're not your friends. They're monsters. You have to trust me." She tugged at his hand, but the shadows tightened their grip on his other arm. There was strength in those shadows, a pull that was unnatural, rooted in ancient evils, buried deep under the earth. Jessica could feel it tugging at her, trying to draw them in, promising that safety lay within the darkness. But she remembered the fleeting moments in sunlight when Ethan smiled, his laughter echoing through the park. No darkness could take that from her. "Ethan, close your eyes." With desperation clawing at her insides, she started backing away, her feet slipping against the wet ground. Every step was a battle, the cold tendrils wrapping tighter, desperately trying to reclaim what was theirs. She could feel something looming behind her, something far worse than shadows, a presence that thrummed with malice. With a surge of resolve, she fell back on her training, on the stories she'd heard whispered down through generations, tales of power drawn from love and sacrifice. She could hear them, those echoing voices, reminding her of the ancient bonds that tie mothers to their children. "Ethan! Focus on the light!" she shouted, ripping her eyes away from the figures, from their imploring, twisted smiles. "Picture our home. Remember our garden, the flowers. You love the flowers." "Mommy, I can't." His face crumpled, anguish etched in every feature as tears continued to stream down his cheeks. The figures twitched closer, their whispers morphing into an anguished chorus, "Join us. Join us only if you surrender your heart. No. I won't give in." Jessica gasped, fury igniting within her. She felt power surging, raw and undefined, emanating from the symbols now glowing with a brilliant light beneath her feet. She lifted Ethan's small face, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Look at me. Look at me." With sheer will, she shouted into the void, "I am his shield. You cannot take him." The forest shook with her declaration. The shadows writhed in response, a cacophony of rage echoing through the trees. A few branches snapped off nearby, falling like heavy rain, but Jessica held her ground, unyielding. A sharp pop resonated through the air, and in a blinding flash, the symbols flared to life. White light split the blackness, illuminating everything with a pulse that shattered the eerie silence. "Mommy!" Ethan cried, squeezing her hand tighter, but Jessica's heart sank as the shadows screamed, the sound curdling her blood. They began to fracture, twisting wildly as the light pushed against them, forcing them back. But something was wrong. They weren't retreating entirely. They were transforming, the air heavy with a thicker dark mass that clawed at Jessica's resolve. "Ethan, we have to move, now." She turned to sprint further away, urgency overpowering her instincts to fight. But to her horror, the woods began to shift, twisting with malice, like a maze intent on trapping them. "Follow me!" she shouted, but as they ran, the very path ahead darkened, branches closing in, creating an ever-changing barrier that sought to engulf them. A scream erupted from below, powerful and deep, emerging from the belly of the earth itself. Jessica felt her feet falter, the ground tremors intensifying as deep cracks opened, revealing darkness so profound it seemed to swallow the very light they fought to protect. "Ethan!" But her voice faltered, the fear pouring in like icy water, suffocating her. The twisted entities, now taking form as wretched faces and skeletal hands, clawed from the depths. They beckoned with an urgent longing, a promise of something unknowable, something terrifying. Suddenly, everything shook violently and then fell eerily still. What had they awakened? Jessica felt a cold sweat trickle down her spine. The grating whispers grew louder, claiming a sinister sound. "We will have you." In that moment, realization hit hard, she wasn't just battling for Ethan's safety. The true horror lay in what that darkness meant for them both. Would she willingly give what it demanded, or face the malignant soul of the forest? "Ethan!" she cried again, as a blinding flash of darkness loomed, ready to engulf them whole. Where would this end? Would sacrifice be their only escape? The silence crept like a thick fog over the forest, heavy and suffocating. Jessica's heart raced, adrenaline spiking as the shadows coiled and hissed around them. The world felt unmoored, and an oppressive weight settled in her chest. "They're coming," she whispered, as she tightened her grip on Ethan's hand, urging him to keep his eyes glued to her. Suddenly, the ground lurched beneath them. She stumbled, pulling Ethan close as the earth opened, a massive fissure gaping wide, dark as a bottomless pit. The air crackled with energy, a heartbeat of the earth thrummed violently. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ethan whimpered, glancing fearfully at the shadows that danced nearer. "Stay with me," Jessica shouted, forcing herself to ignore the terror that gnawed at her gut. The memories how they used to run through the fields, sunlight bursting through leaves jolted to the surface, their warmth a fragile armor against the encroaching dread. "Pray," she urged, as the figures howled with sorrowful intent. "Just keep praying." The shadows twisted, their eyes flashing with malevolence, yearning to break through, hunger etched in every malevolent face. They were no longer just whispers, they were screams of despair, a wretched choir that only sought to consume. They reformulated, drawing power from the fear rippling through the air, stretching impossibly close, enticing and terrifying all at once. "Ethan, our garden," she shouted, desperation coating her words. "Remember the flowers? Picture the sun, focus on that." Ethan's hands trembled as he closed his eyes, breath catching in fast gasps. She could feel the barrier between them and the shadows thinning, her body flooding with panic. The swirling dark mass advanced, an unholy tide that crashed against her resolve, then, the hushed tones of the trees shifted, as if the very woods conspired against them. A low grunt echoed, deep and guttural, cracking the illusion of stillness. Raw power surged from the darkness as the entity burrowed deeper, threatening to swallow everything whole. Jessica shot a desperate glance at the fissure, its depths radiating an ominous glow that threatened to pull them in. "Run, Ethan! Now!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the oppressive air like a knife. They bolted, the shrieks of the shadows trailing behind them, echoing with a cadence that felt primal, ancient. The trees closed in like jaws ready to snap. With each step, she felt them pushing back, the grip of the nightmare tightening around her. "Where to?" Ethan cried, panting hard. "Just ahead." Jessica pointed to a glimmer of illumination that pierced the dark, a pool of light they had to reach at all costs. "Hold my hand, never let go." As they neared, a malevolence surged, dark claws clawing at their minds. The whispers drowned out her thoughts, and dread began to seep into her bones. They fell to the ground, a shock wave erupted from the shadows as she fought against the rising tide of terror. "We will have you. Your sacrifice is needed." The entity's voice warped around them, a serpentine sound that wrapped around her heart, squeezing tighter. "No. You will not take him," Jessica shouted, unwilling to succumb. Every ounce of her being sparkled with flaring defiance. The light was so close, but the shadows pushed against her, whispers piercing like arrows. "You'll join us. Forever." Blind panic surged through her, but Jessica doubled down at the thought of losing Ethan. She would never allow it. Fighting back with everything she had, she surged forward, dragging Ethan up from the damp earth, but just as they reached the light, a shadow lunged, arms outstretched, ready to engulf them both. "Mommy, help." The delicate balance between darkness and light hung in the air, fracturing with chilling frequencies. Jessica turned back, eyes wide, confronting the horror looming before them. Would love's strength be enough to cut through the encroaching void, or had they irrevocably crossed a line, sealing their fates? As the light flickered, dimming beneath the weight of despair, Jessica understood this was just the beginning. What price would she pay to save her son, and could they escape without losing themselves? The light pulsed violently, an ethereal glow that illuminated the terror enveloping them. Shadows writhed, flickering like flames eager to consume. Jessica drew Ethan closer, feeling his tiny body shiver against her. The air thickened, constricting her chest, making it hard to breathe. "Mommy." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, laden with fear. "Focus on the light," she urged, her own heart racing. "We can make it." But as she stared into the flickering brightness, clouds of darkness pressed tighter around them, transforming the sanctuary into a mere illusion, the figure lunging at them wasn't just a shadow. It had shape, a grotesque mishmash of faces flickering in and out of existence, like a reflection in distorted glass. The despair was palpable, clawing at her resolve. Stumbling back, she felt Ethan's grip slip for a moment. A wave of dread surged through her veins. "Ethan!" she gasped, reaching out instinctively. But he was back, clutching her tightly. "Don't let go," she ordered, her voice strained, shattering beneath the weight of urgency. "Never." His answer was fierce and pure, an anchor in the storm. They pressed on, feet slapping against the damp earth, racing toward the sanctuary of light that in that instant, a deafening silence fell over the forest, as if nature itself held its breath. The shadows convulsed, momentarily halted. A cold, eerie laughter echoed, resonating deep within her bones. "You think you can escape," it taunted, its voice slithering through the air like smoke. Jessica faltered, fear locking her in place. "No!" she shouted defiantly, pulling Ethan along. "We are not afraid of you." But the cool air around them thickened, swirling like a storm unleashed. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, reaching relentlessly toward them. One clawed at her ankle, the chill biting into her flesh. She kicked it away, forcing herself to forge ahead. "Mommy," Ethan whimpered. "What are they?" A pang in her chest twisted deeper. "I don't know," she replied truthfully, "but we'll find a way. We have to keep going." With each stride, the shadows fought harder, swirling closer, licking at their heels. The light flickered dangerously, casting grotesque shapes that danced in a macabre performance, a tantalizing threat. She could feel them hot on her trail, hungry. Every heartbeat was a countdown, each second dragging her deeper into despair. Suddenly, she stumbled, her foot catching on something. Before she could react, the ground gave way beneath her, and she fell, pulling Ethan down with her. They landed hard, the light above shrinking rapidly, an island extending too far away in an ocean of ink. "Mommy!" Ethan screamed, desperation etching itself into his voice. "Hold on to me!" Jessica yelled, scrambling for purchase, but the shadows surged, almost as if they were waiting. The darkness swirled above her, teasing them with the promise of an end, whispering secrets that about her, about Ethan, promises veiled in lies. Then a cold hand gripped her wrist. It wasn't gentle, it felt like ice. She yanked away, panic surging as she wrestled with the cold that threatened to seep into her soul. The shadows' whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of despair. "Join us, join us. You belong here. Not my son," she shouted, fighting against the pull of the darkness that seeped into her thoughts. "We will never belong to you." As she pulled Ethan close, she noticed the barrier of light shimmer beyond the thickening shadows. "There!" she gasped, pointing toward the faint glow. "We can still make it." They clawed their way forward, the shadows grasping, wrapping around their limbs with an insistent grip. She pushed through, clawing and pulling Ethan, the light drawing them in like a moth to a flame. Just as they reached the edge of brightness, darkness struck like a viper. Pain seared through Jessica's leg as a shadow tore at her, dragging her back into the void. "Mommy!" Ethan's screams pierced her heart. With a final surge of resolve, she twisted her body, lurching for the light. "Hold tight." But Ethan stumbled, his small foot caught in the grip of another shadow, and a silence. Fell once more. "Mommy, help!" The shadows consumed her vision, but she felt the wretched pull, the sickening urge to give in that clawed at her sanity. Jessica screamed, her voice rising above the chaos, a haunting melody echoing in the forest. And then, just as it seemed all hope was lost, a flash of memory crossed her mind. Warm days in the garden, flowers blooming, laughter. The light surged again. If she could hold on to that for Ethan, she had to. The shadows screamed back, their collective voice a horrifying symphony. "You will become one with us never." Jessica's voice rang out, defiant, as she continued to fight, but doubt began to seep in alongside the darkness. With each heartbeat, the chasm of despair threatened to engulf them both. Would she reach the light in time, or would they be lost forever in the abyss? As she felt the pull intensify, she came to a terrifying realization. Perhaps the truth of their escape would not be what she had hoped for. What if the light held its own sinister secret? The ground beneath Jessica felt alive, undulating like the back of an enormous beast ready to swallow them whole. She glanced at Ethan, his eyes wide with fear, glistening like dark marbles in a storm. The light pulsing above them, or was it blinding now? Seemed to flicker in a mocking rhythm, as if it, too, was teasing their desperation. "Mommy, what is happening? What is that light?" Ethan whimpered, his tiny hands gripping her tighter, knuckles white against the encroaching darkness. "It's our way out," she replied, praying the words held truth. She wasn't sure anymore. Maybe it was just another cruel trick of the shadows. The grip of the cold tendrils lessened momentarily, a deceptive breath of air that promised freedom. Jessica used every ounce of strength to lunge forward, dragging Ethan with her. But the shadows, relentless and angry, lashed out again. One clawed at her face, scraping the flesh, a cold burn that stole her breath. She staggered, but her resolve hardened as Ethan's frightened whimper cut through her pain. "Come on," she shouted, forcing herself to focus. The light flickered more intensely, almost rhythmic now. Almost familiar. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked, a twisted chorus that clawed at her sanity. "You cannot escape the truth," they howled, voices layered with venomous glee. Each wretched word was laced with knowledge, secrets that smothered her resolve. Jessica dashed forward, desperate to outpace the creeping darkness. She never felt this raw, howling dread, like the ice of despair reaching for her lungs. "Stay with me, Ethan," she cried, but the shadows were relentless, whispering dark truths she didn't want to hear. What if the light was a trick? What if it led them straight into another level of torment? The thought made her blood turn to ice. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head, as if the movement could dispel the insidious doubts. "We can't listen to them. They want us to give up." And then, she remembered. The stories. Their warnings whispering in the back of her mind from late-night conversations. "It's all about the power of memory," one of her old friends had said. "The stronger the memory, the stronger your shield against what's out there." With a frantic push, Jessica squeezed her eyes shut, concentrating on those fleeting memories. Ethan's laughter echoing in their sunny backyard, the smell of fresh lemonade, the warmth of a summer's day. Her heart raced as the darkness seemed to throb with frustration, its cacophony growing more desperate. "Ethan! Think of our garden. Think of the flowers," she shouted, holding him tight. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then she felt it, a pulse of warmth radiating from Ethan, a flicker of light in the midst of the darkness. As if the child's innocent memories sparked a chain reaction, the shadows recoiled, swirling around them with a hiss of discontent. "You think memories can save you?" they shrieked, their voices slicing through the air like shards of glass. "You think you can find solace in such fragile things?" Suddenly, the ground shuddered beneath them, a violent tremor that threatened to break apart reality. Jessica stumbled, the memories in her mind shifting and collapsing like a house of cards. They needed to keep moving, but the shadows gathered again, like a swarm of locusts. The light above pulsed violently, shifting into a ghastly shade of red. Moments before it eclipsed entirely, Jessica caught a glimpse of something, a figure at its core, a silhouette that reminded her of her own face but twisted and corrupted. What, she gasped, terror seizing her chest. Was she seeing herself? The realization hammered against her thoughts in a rhythm as chaotic as her heartbeat. "Join us, Jessica," the figure breathed, its voice sultry yet hollow. "Embrace your fate. You belong with us now." Shaking with fear, she clutched Ethan to her, her instincts screaming at her to flee from the truth the shadows handed her. They had to escape, but where would they go? "Mommy! I'm scared!" Ethan cried, his small voice breaking through the thick haze of panic. The shadows writhed in. Delight, mocking her desperation. What if the light was their way in? What if love itself could betray them? The pulsing light grew dimmer, the shadows coiling tighter, a final trap ready to close in. As Jessica fought against the suffocating darkness, a sense of dread swelled within her. Could they truly escape? Or would they be consumed by the secrets hiding in that sickly glow? With one more push, she lunged for the light, praying against everything that it would not betray them in the end. But as the shadows lashed out, she felt the terrifying truth dawning upon her. Sometimes, the greatest fear lies not in the shadows, but in the light itself. Jessica's vision blurred as she lunged for the flickering light, yet the darkness refused to relent. It surged around them, a tumultuous wave of despair that grasped at her ankles, ready to drag them back into its cold embrace. As screams echoed in her mind, she realized she had to fight against the very instinct to yield to the creeping fear. "Ethan! We have to go!" she cried, her voice tinged with panic. She began to run again, pulling him along as they plunged deeper into the ghastly array of shadows and flickering light. The figure in the red haze pulsed ominously, distorting her own reflection, mocking her with the most intimate betrayal. "You can't escape what you've become," it taunted, the shadows rippling as if delighted by her growing despair. "You're all alone." Jessica glanced back, heart racing, and for a moment, she saw a whole crowd of figures emerging from the darkness, their faces twisted and x-rayed, a collage of fear that appeared familiar. Were they her past friends? The faces melted into a swirling mass, whispering words that drifted down like haunting leaves. "Join us, Jessica. Don't resist. You belong here." "No!" she shouted, falling deeper into frenzied flight. The comforting warmth of Ethan next to her was the last barricade separating her from joining the sinister parade. "You're mine!" she yelled into the abyss, determination igniting in her gut. That moment, a fissure of light flared from the core, illuminating the terrain briefly, revealing grotesque visages that roamed like the damned. Jessica's breath hitched as she skidded to a halt, eyes widening at the specter of her own psyche spilling out before her. Tall and looming, it curled around her thoughts, wrapping them tightly, squeezing the air from her lungs. "Stop!" she gasped, clutching Ethan desperately, the boy's soft whimper cutting through the horror that encased her. "Remember our garden." Jessica recalled Ethan's joy with each flower they planted together. The warmth of the sun. The blue sky. She urged, hoping to summon that forgotten safety. The shadows shrieked at her defiance, hurling waves of chilling despair that clawed at her skin. The very ground rolled like the belly of a beast broiling with anger. The nearby light flickered once, twice, and then dimmed into an ominous hue. "Do you really believe in your happy memories?" the chorus mocked, rising around her like a storm. Jessica's heart thundered. The air thickened with tension, echoing back her thoughts, warping them. "Look behind you," it whispered, and against her better judgment, she turned. Ethan gasped as figures lurked within the shadows. Faces of joy morphed into dreadful masks of horror. Each of them carried reminders of her past, the friendships she had lost, the moments of betrayal she had buried. The memories gnawed at her resolve, splintering her defense. "No. No," she murmured. "Turn back," came the seductive whisper of the dark, coaxing her as it reached out. "Join the thing you fear, and all will be forgiven." Jessica felt its tendrils beckoning, draping over her shoulders like a shroud. A familiar voice intertwined with the shadows, nearly shattering her resolve. "Help us, Jessica. You know you want to." "No," she shrieked, wrenching her head away. "Mommy's here. You're safe, Ethan. Trust me." In a moment of raw clarity, Jessica pushed through the tendrils tearing at her mind. She stumbled forward, but warmth flickered again through her memories, making a cozy fort, giggling under a night sky full of stars. It burned away the darkness like sunlight dispels the dawn. With a fierce, primal scream, she tightened her grip around Ethan and charged toward the pulsing light with furious, wild abandon. But as they plunged deeper, light darkened, revealing unearthly shapes materializing just beyond. It felt like they were being watched, eyes embedded in corners threatening to pull them back again. Everything in her screamed to turn around, but she had come too far. Truth clawed with monstrous hunger behind her. Would the warmth of memories guide them home, or would it simply lead them deeper into despair? As icy fingers traced up her spine, she realized there was no sanctuary here either. Shadows weren't the only enemy, the light behind them might consume them as surely as the dark. With her heart hammering, Jessica dared to ask the chilling question, are we about to make the worst mistake of our lives? As Jessica and Ethan plunged closer to the pulsating light, a new sense of urgency flooded her veins. The warmth radiated from the core, almost alive, promising safety yet warning of consequences unseen. With every beat of her heart, the darkness behind them writhed hungry and relentless, relentless. She had to reach that brilliant beacon. Ethan, stay close, she urged, pulling him in tighter. Fear gnawed at her insides, but she pushed through, driven by fierce love. A fleeting thought crossed her mind: what if this light was just another trick? A mental snare set by the shadows lurking in the night. But the memory of Ethan's laughter, the vibrant green of their garden, those sacred moments shot through her like a bolt of certainty, refusing to fade. Then, the shadows stormed forward again, gaseous fingers reaching out like claws, desperate to claim them. They hissed in frustration, shrieking, "You cannot escape. Embrace what you fear." Each word was a deafening echo, reverberating through the air like a twisted melody. "Grab my hand, Mommy," Ethan cried, knowing instinctively that they had to be united. The world around them twisted further, shadows pooling like a dark tide swelling against their resolve. But Jessica's grip was unyielding. "Move with me. We are not theirs," she shouted into the void, heart racing. In that moment, the light flickered, pulsing wildly, as if it was alive, testing their convictions. Jessica forced herself to remember every beautiful moment she and Ethan had shared, running under the sun, planting flowers, shared stories that danced with joy. She drew strength from them, anchoring herself amid the profound fear. The dark figures surged dangerously close, their insistent whispers laced with malice, attempting to fracture her resolve, to make her doubt. "You are alone, Jessica. You cannot save him. Join us, give in," they wailed, their faces a grotesque blend of horror and twisted familiarity. Tears streamed down her face as she fought against their seduction, each drop bleeding resolve as she slammed firmly against the dark's perverse lullaby. "Shut up. You will not take him from me," she screamed, feeling the very essence of her being surge with fierce energy. With one final push, they lunged into the light, a barrier of warmth enveloping them as they burst through the shadow's suffocating grasp. The moment they broke free, an explosive roar echoed behind them, a rage so primal it shook the ground. But against that tumult, the brilliance embraced them, reflecting memories and promises of love so pure that the darkness howled in agony. They stumbled into a dazzling clearing, a sanctuary of ethereal beauty. The moon hung high, illuminating wildflowers that danced under a gentle breeze. For a moment, Jessica was awash in its serenity, the beauty almost too overwhelming. But she had to stay grounded. "Ethan, look." She bent down, and Ethan's eyes sparkled with wonder, reflecting back the warmth of life, the very essence they fought to preserve. "I want to go home," he exclaimed, clutching her tightly again, fear still evident in his wide eyes. "Then we will go home," she promised, a wave of fierce determination washing over her. They took a breath together, and for the first time it felt like freedom. The shadows pulsed outside the boundary, veiling the darkness from tantalizing them any further. But was the warmth of this place what it seemed? Was it truly a sanctuary, or just a deceptive glow masking deeper truths? Jessica took a deep breath, pushing aside doubt. "Together, Ethan. We hold on to our light," she asserted firmly. Reassured by their bond, she focused on the path ahead, realizing home lay in their hearts, not just a physical return. Together, they stepped forward into the light pooling at the edge of the clearing, the murmur of the forest fading into an echo, their laughter intertwining, filling the warm air with a melody that promised hope. And as they moved, the chaotic shadows were left behind, screaming their anger a distant wail like the whispers of a nightmare, slipping away into nothingness. They ran, holding each other, the garden of memories breathing life into their path as they sailed through the embrace of the moonlight. As their figures faded into the horizon, a tender calm washed over them. They had escaped the grasp of the darkness, navigating through despair with love as their compass. The world was large, filled with complexities, but true home was found in each other's hearts. Jessica glanced at Ethan, and for the first time since the night began, her heart felt light again. He smiled up at her, his laughter ringing true, unfurling into the night sky, and in that moment, Jessica knew they had triumphed. Together, they embraced hope, finding solace in the light, together surviving not just the shadows of fear, but emerging into the brightness of love. And with the promise of new adventures ahead, Jessica whispered softly, "I will always protect you." As the stars shone brightly above them, they stepped confidently into their new beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel with these actions.